Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and melting hobos. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at street trash. Buckle up, folks. This one's a doozy. This 1987 horror comedy follows a group of homeless people that have taken up residence in the local junkyard. Their lives consist of robbing grocery stores, getting hassled by dirty cops, straight up committing murder, and being driven mad by Vietnam flashbacks. On top of that, a liquor store begins selling poisonous booze that causes the hobos to literally melt from the inside out. This all comes to a head when two brothers find themselves caught up in a war between the vicious junkyard king and an enraged, roided out cop. And they'll have to put their differences aside if they want to make it out alive. Street Trash was directed by J. Michael Muro Jr. and is based off a short film of his own making. This is his only directorial effort, but he's made an incredible career as a cinematographer and camera operator. Bro's worked on Titanic, Heat, Terminator 2, The Fast and the Furious, LA Confidential, A Few Good Men, The Abyss, Predator 2, and Red Dragon, just to name a few. The screenplay was written by Roy Frumkiss of films like The Substitute and Document of the Dead, who wrote it with the democratic intention of offending every person on the planet. The film was mostly shot on site at an auto collision yard in Greenpoint that was owned by Muro's father. This was a very low budget production with a budget of around $500,000, so most of the actors in this did not go on to be in much else, and they were improvising a lot of the time. Street Trash stars Mike Lackey as Fred, Bill Chappelle as Bill, Mark Saraza as Kevin, and Jane Arakawa as Wendy. A couple slightly more experienced actors include Vic Noto from Crack Dog and Pat Ryan from The Toxic Avenger. Y'all might recognize him from my extended intro. He's the fat, half-naked guy eating a cheeseburger while getting massaged. Cinematography was handled by Dave Sperling of Olivia and Toxic Zombies, and the score was composed by Rick Ulfick, who also worked with Frumkiss on Document of the Dead. The bizarre and fantastic effects for the melts were created by lead actor Mike Lackey, as well as Jennifer Aspinall, who also worked on Mulholland Drive, The Toxic Avenger, and fucking Spookies. The film did receive a very small theatrical release, but it largely circulated via VHS. It received mixed reviews from critics, with many finding it to be an irredeemable, poorly made piece of schlock with nothing to offer but shock value. But others have found value in the schlock and grime, describing it as an overtly critical look at political hierarchy that celebrates the poor and working class's own disenfranchisement as a badge of aesthetic honor. It has remained a controversial mixed bag to this day, with a 55 and 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, along with a 3 on Letterboxd. But it has certainly found a home with fans of similar splatter and exploitation flicks. If you're a fan of Trauma, you're gonna love this. I also somehow missed that there was a remake of Street Trash in 2024. It doesn't have the best reviews, but if you have seen it, let me know what you thought of it. Thank you so much to my patron Uncle Pete for requesting Street Trash for me to review. I can always count on him to bring me some crazy shit to review. But before we jump in, I do want to acknowledge a few things. One is that this movie is constantly bouncing around to a bunch of different characters, locations, and storylines, a lot of which don't really contribute to the major plot. There will be some jokes, minor characters, and interactions that I won't be able to fully explain here, so definitely go see the movie if you're interested in all the little details. And the second thing is that this is not a movie for the sensitive or squeamish. Pretty much every character in this movie is outright crass, vile, violent, racist, sexist, transphobic, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, and pretty much any other offensive character trait you can think of. It seems Frumkiss succeeded in his goal to offend as many people as possible. But I guess we'll be the judges of that today, so it's probably time we get started. I hope y'all brought some rot gut hooch, cause we're watching street trash. The movie opens in beautiful Greenpoint, a neighborhood in Brooklyn. A hobo named Fred snatches a bottle from a liquor store, and the ensuing chase causes an accident and the opportunity for Fred to grab some cash. He manages to lose his pursuers by cutting through a burning building and hiding in a garbage truck, but he does lose the cash in the process. The fella he robbed is named Wizzy, and he's a henchman for a guy named Bronson, a big mean fella who rules over the hobos living at the junkyard. And now he wants Fred dead. Meanwhile, the liquor store owner Ed is checking the basement for any product he can bring upstairs. He finds a crate of Tenafly Viper, a cheap booze made way back in the 1920s. Some may consider this unsafe to sell, but not our guy Ed. He tries to push the Viper on Fred for $1, but when a disabled customer knocks over some bottles, he's able to snatch it for free. Bronson has left the junkyard in pursuit of Fred and interrupts some window washers to harass this guy. Bronson's a Vietnam vet and gets pissed when the driver shares that he's on the Coast Guard reserves. So pissed that he smashes the weekend warrior right through his own windshield. Fred's buddy Paulie manages to swipe the Viper from him, and then homie gets jumped by Wizzy. Fred obviously doesn't have his money, so Wizzy just gives him an ass whooping. Paulie returns home, if you can call it that, and starts swigging the Viper on his porcelain throne. But that shit might as well be xenomorph blood because it burns right through him and causes him to melt into a glorious technicolor pile of sludge. Oh yeah. Now we meet a sort of will they won't they couple named Wendy and Kevin, the latter of whom has made a pretty impressive home out of tires. Kevin talks about his childhood home and fond memories of his older brother Fred. Yes, that one. Wendy's not a hobo, she works for Frank at the junkyard, where she takes in runaways like Kevin and tries to rehabilitate them. Frank's less of a bleeding heart and warns her to stop caring for the bums during work hours. This guy, simply known as Black Suit, yabbers on to Ed for a while before coming across the windshield murder, where corrupt cop Bill threatens to kill him if he doesn't bring him some info on Bronson. But given that he's got himself a bottle of Viper, I don't think Black Suit will have time to dig up any intel. Oh no, he splattered on some guy's face. Oh damn, it even killed him, and Bill is too busy insulting the witnesses to even try and help. Bronson takes notice of Wendy putzing around with Kevin and loses interest in his own lady friend Wynette, and she proceeds to yell at him until she gets slapped to the ground. Then Fred hits Wendy with the most racist insult of the film so far, which is genuinely saying a lot. Kevin managed to make a few bucks helping out with the junkyard cars, which Freddy's buddy Bert uses to buy some mystery meat from the butcher. Fred complains about his shitty day to his little bro, and we also learn that their dad was seriously traumatized by his time in the Vietnam War, so that's why Fred hates Asians, I guess. Meanwhile, Bert is stealing salsa, cantaloupes, raw chicken, and just about everything else in the grocery store. A little old white lady tries to snitch on him.
Now this old honky skilled snitch ass motherfucker tells you something and you say, come with me. Now you taking her word over mine. Now that's discrimination.
But Bert makes it out with the goods. By now, 3 people have been melted by what the cops assume is drugs laced with some kind of biological weapon, so Bill decides to get some dirt on Bronson himself since he's suspect number 1. That night, Bronson regales his followers with war stories, and the boys enjoy Bert's stolen chicken. They discuss the presence of this new Muscle Beach cop. Apparently he was in a gunfight last year and has been sent to Greenpoint as a sort of demotion. Later that night, Bronson has a nightmare about his time in Nam Land, which involved a lot of killing and apparently making love with rescued hostages. He wakes up with a fright and yeets a grenade. Very safe living situation for Kevin here. Meanwhile, Fred finds a very drunk, horny woman puking in an alley and takes her home. Her date was this guy Nicky, but more on him later. The hobos come out of every nook and cranny looking like the hills have eyes when they hear a woman in the junkyard. They cheer on as Fred and her get it on, but he soon passes out and the band of drooling creeps break in and take her. Wow, this got unpleasant very quickly. Wizzy gets jumped by some punks and nearly set on fire, and his situation gets only slightly better when Bill tosses him into the paddy wagon with a bunch of prostitutes. It seems he spilled the tea on Bronson to Bill, given the fact he wakes up the next morning showered and rocking a new fit. Then we jump to Frank trying to rape Wendy in his office, and this one is played for laughs even more when he pretends to die and pin her down under his fat body. She whacks him with a license plate and he gets back to work yelling at bums and preventing his dog from licking the nut from his pants. Pete, what are you doing to me? Then he finds that poor woman dead on the shoreline and he fucks her corpse. Fred wanders into Bronson's neck of the junkyard and gets jumped by him for the money he owes, although Bronson gets momentarily distracted with cutting a guy's dick off. It gets hot potatoed all around the junkyard, but the victim's able to reclaim his pecker and hitch a ride to the hospital on a school bus. The cops have picked up the dead woman's body, and Nicky Duran has ID'd her as his girlfriend. Nicky is your typical Italian-American mobster and plans on whacking Fred and the doorman who let him walk off with her. One of Nicky's henchmen sneaks into the junkyard and tries to whack Fred at the urinals, but the hobo manages to escape outside. Bill happens to be there with the hopes to stop the would-be assassination, and he gives the hitman a classic beatdown. Oh wait, then he throws up on the guy's head? I take that classic comment back, I have never seen that before. Bill tells Frank that he'll be back tonight to round up all the bums, and inadvertently shares that he probably got syphilis now. He rolls up on Nicky and the two throw insults at each other, so it seems a mobster-cop war is about to break loose. Now Fred and Kevin are arguing about each other's life decisions, mostly surrounding his crush on Wendy, and the older brother says he wants nothing to do with him anymore and kicks him out of their humble abode. Bill sneaks into Bronson's village, where he's greeted by Wynette and Bronson's bone knife. He yeets her into a wall and the big boys start brawling. It goes on for a while and features a couple fun weapons, but Bronson ultimately seizes the day and strangles Bill to death. Cheers for the winner, piss for the loser. Fred angrily buys another bottle of Viper, and at this point I hope he drinks it. But first up is this fella, who proceeds to swell up like a watermelon and explode. Fred witnesses this and realizes it's the Viper, so he rushes back to Ed's, but then he comes across Wizzy and decides not to be the bigger man. He eggs the geezer into beating him up and snatching the Viper from him, but then Bert swoops in and steals it back. Wizzy whacks him with a pipe and steals it again though, and he slurps it all down. He starts spewing out all kinds of colorful shit and melting, kinda looking like Freddy Krueger for a moment, but then ultimately dies looking like something out of The Thing. Okay, now Fred's rushing back to Ed's, but now that stupid bastard is sipping the Viper. Ooh, he splooges orange like a graboid. Meanwhile, Bronson is daydreaming about Vietnam and his lackeys have buried Bill under some rocks. Ooh, one of them also bought the big man some Viper. But abused ass Wynette finally takes a stand and snatches it from him. I appreciate the passion, but you picked one hell of a time to revolt, Queen. Oh no, not the gooey boobies. Oh hey, Wendy and Kevin are finally gonna get it on. Bro, wipe your fucking face, you're always so dirty. But just before things can get good, Bronson breaks in and attacks Kevin. Why? Because I guess he needs a new Wynette? I'm not really sure. He chases Kevin into some kind of storage area and murks a guy with his bone knife, but Kevin's able to slip away thanks to a well-placed nut shot. Fred arrives to defend his little bro, even chucking a viper at Bronson, but unfortunately it only causes a flesh wound.
Dead maggot shit. Dead maggot shit!
He starts pounding on the little guy and prepares for the killing blow, but Kevin comes in clutch by releasing an oxygen tank that blows his fucking head off. Oh hell yeah! Rot in hell, you bodiless scumbag. The movie ends with Kevin and Wendy embracing, but there is a fun mid-credit scene. Nicky Duran has captured the disrespectful doorman and is about to make him sleep with the fishes, but he makes the unfortunate choice to sip the viper in his pocket before he can make it happen. And that's Street Trash. Whoo boy, this is a weird fucking film. I mean, it's obviously not gonna be for everybody. This thing is chock full of offensive language and stereotypes, extremely uncomfortable sexual innuendos and straight up assaults, and other components that people who aren't well versed in exploitation films are probably gonna find downright shocking. And hell, it's even shocking and unsettling for me at times. But similar to a John Waters film, I think there's a lot more going on here than just a childish attempt to offend people. Don't get me wrong, this thing is fully out to be vile, crass, and disgusting, but I think From Kiss and Muro had more of a method to their madness than at least some critics would be willing to admit. This is a film meant to push you out of your cushy little comfort zone and bombard you with vile shit for 90 minutes straight. It's an attack on moral decency, establishment, political correctness. It's a big middle finger to the man and anyone who supports him. It's an illustration of how America is failing and its population and principles are rotting like trash on the street. And when you're out on that street, all of your decency and modern concepts of society don't mean shit. You've got to fight and steal and kill for yourself because nobody else is gonna look out for you. It's a film that was embraced by the punk youths of the late 80s and early 90s because of a sort of thrashing quality. It holds no punches and lets them out in every which direction. But while it is very much a boots on the ground, indie grassroots kind of project that I can really respect and appreciate, I also can't say that I truly love and enjoy watching Street Trash either. Don't get me wrong, I love the film when people are melting, exploding, and otherwise turning into goo, but those moments are surprisingly few and far between. There is a bizarre but great sense of world building here as we meet so many characters and locations, as well as a lot of really fun schlocky moments like the severed penis and even the Vietnam nightmares to an extent, but there's also a few moments that go a bit too far for me and stop being fun. The most obvious example is the gang rape scene, as well as really everything involving that woman from the time Fred picks her up to when Frank commits necrophilia on her. Not to mention he sexually assaults Wendy literally right before that. I know I literally just said a severed penis scene is funny, so obviously I have a warped sense of humor, but for those scenes there's a line that is crossed somewhere where I stop having fun and the subject matter is not something I can view from an entertainment kind of standpoint. Other moments like this include Fred's racist animosity towards Wendy, as well as Bronson's abuse of Wynette. But I do think these moments are very important to the film and they really remind us here that nobody is the good guy. Fred may be the protagonist, but he isn't the hero, and Bronson may be the villain and probably the most evil, but he isn't that different from Fred, or the guy selling liquor, or Nicky Duran, or the cop. In this world, money may make you more clean, but it doesn't necessarily make you less vile. And it's not like Fred's racism was some imaginary thing made up for the film. They were capturing very real tension and hate that existed in the world at this time. These additions keep Street Trash from simply being a splatter comedy film. It's doing something more challenging than just making us laugh. It's making us draw a line of what is funny and what's not, what's too far and what's off limits, where do we become the police of moral decency, and what exactly makes us different from the filthy bums on screen. And from a technical standpoint, there is still so much to appreciate in Street Trash. It's easy to see why Muro would go on to work with the Steadicam so well. There are so many shots with great utilizations of movement and panning. I love the Evil Dead POV type shots. I also really love the almost train of thought kind of storytelling happening here. It makes the film a little bit hard to follow, but it adds this almost drunken feeling as we meander through this fucked up cesspool. And those melting effects really are something special. There's a repugnant beauty inside those rainbow puddles of sludge. And honestly, that's what I think Street Trash is all about. It's a love letter to all things low, grimy, and publicly shamed. It lives and breathes sleaze and wears degeneracy like a badge of honor. All in all, Street Trash is a strange combination of fun and unbearable, genius and childish, and technically masterful while simultaneously incompetent. I can understand if you hate it or if it's one of your all-time favorites. It is uniquely itself and doesn't try to be anything but that. While I can't say I entirely love and enjoy watching Street Trash, I have a ton of respect and appreciation for it and all the people who came together to make it happen. Well, that's about it. Thank you again to my patron, Uncle Pete, for requesting Street Trash for me to review. This thing was an absolute hoot to try and write a synopsis of. But what do y'all think of Street Trash? Did you love the effects? Was it too much for you? Let me know down below. And be sure to join me in 2 weeks as we rejoin the Texas Chainsaw franchise with a 2003 remake. Thank you all so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Whew, thanks for watching my review of Street Trash. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, be sure to check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks, y'all.